Welcome. This is an awesome episode. I had the privilege of sitting down with Dr. Thomas Myers. He's a board-certified orthopedic surgeon who specializes in sports medicine. He's been a physician since 1996. He was a resident at Harvard University, and his year-long fellowship was under the world-renowned surgeon, Dr. James Andrews. Along with Dr. Thomas Myers was a friend and colleague, Matt Hallmark, who joined us. For this episode, most of our conversation centers around discussions with Dr. Myers. He's incredibly knowledgeable and refreshingly open, honest about what it means to truly own your career and your practice. One of the things I admire most about Dr. Myers is the strength he shows in being independent, which is incredibly rare in the world we live in today, where a lot of doctors and surgeons are hospital employed and have some form of partnership in a practice, where his practice is solely owned and run by him. Because of this, he not only speaks his mind, but he shares what I think is an inspiring outlook on healthcare, where surgeons can start to regain their power and not be such a cog in the wheel of healthcare today. We talk about medical device sales reps, what it's like to work with them. We talk about integrity in healthcare, and we make some predictions for the future of healthcare. What's funny is between the filming this introduction, I had a conversation with a colleague who will be on a future podcast, share with me some interesting information coming from the government in years to come that shows that our predictions are not far off as to where healthcare will be going based on how hospitals are judged and how doctors and hospitals will be paid. I'm genuinely grateful to have him on, and I'm excited to help amplify his message. I hope you find this conversation and insight as empowering and interesting as I did. Enjoy our conversation with Dr. Tom Myers and Matt Hallmark.
How old is your company? Like, how long have you been doing this? And how, like, are you getting some good feedback? Is there a good, social media presence?
This has been an idea for quite a bit, but I only started in 2024. So back in 2016, I became a manager, and I was at this large branch in New York for Stryker, and all of the big managers, all of the other managers that have been there for a while were dealing with the big customers, the big problems, the big sales reps. And I was 28 years old at the time, and I'm like, where do I find my space? Other than making sure my reps have what they need, how can I help in the office? And It was dealing with all the candidates that were coming in and the onboarding process for these young candidates that were kind of like left alone, don't know what to do. And I'm sure, Matt, you've seen it, like, they'll sink or swim kind of thing. It's like, if they use some guidance, they could be okay. So with that in mind, I wanted to create something, but trying to create a business on the side when you have a quota to hit, it just doesn't mix. Yeah. So in 2024, I left Siemens, and I was like, I'm going to see where this goes. So that's been going really well, and now I'm shifting to full on, Bree's been handling the marketing for a few months now, and we're getting our name out there and bringing in clients. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. It's been fun, for sure.
I think we have a wealth of knowledge between all of us that we could definitely push out there to the world.
Yeah. I appreciate your words before too, Matt. I mean, it's really encouraging to hear what you had to say, and you start to, I'm sitting in this office here, and Bree and I are working together on building out the website and the content and all that. And then you start to forget like all the contacts you've made. And a lot of people that I've spoken to are just like, yeah, I'm happy to help. The world needs it. Like, it's either medical sales college, which is $10,000 or $20,000, or hopefully you know someone, or maybe go to check out a video on YouTube. There really isn't much out there. So I want to keep the price point low, and there's a lot of people that could just use some support and position themselves better so they can get a job that's ideal for them.
I think the education and understanding of what it really means to be in this space is not well understood. So if you can, not necessarily to deter people, but really educate them about what they're getting into, is different than what they think they're getting into, right? It's Mike Tyson's famous line is like, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
Right. But that's what happens is you get into medical sales and you get punched in the face, and you don't know which way is which. Like, what am I doing? Where do I go? What's next? How do I do that? And so many people get into it thinking, oh, this is going to be so easy. I love working with doctors. I get to help patients. I'm like, yeah, that's part, like a very very minute part of this.
Mm-hmm.
The other side of it is the daily grind of what it really entails in order to be in this space. And I can only imagine, and Dr. Myers will have to share his side, what it's like to be on their side in the operating room, dealing with us, trying to tell them information about our products and what they should or shouldn't be doing in a way that's education-wise, but not telling them, just giving them the information and letting them make the decision. And that's a very, very difficult place to be in.
I'm not afraid of telling people. I essentially have a course where it's the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then you decide if you want to get in. Because I'm making a mistake if I'm trying to just get people on board to pay so that they can get into medical stuff. I've seen so many people just want, again, I'll go back to Stryker. When I was with Stryker, so many people wanted to just have that business card and say that they work for Stryker, and then they'll meet with you and you're like, I'll do anything. And it's like, it's just because you're out of college, you don't have a real job, and you would love to work for Stryker. It makes sense. I was like, but do you know what you're asking for? I'm a trauma manager. Right? Do you know what 24/7 really means? Do you know what these trays look like? Are you sure? You know? So it's really educating them on fully grasping what they have to do, and then be sure that you want this specific role, right? Maybe you don't. Maybe you want to be a pharma rep and you want to go to the offices and you only work office hours, right? There's different ways to get into the industry. It doesn't have to all be super intense. So just helping. It's really, like you said, it's educating people.
Dr. Myers, what's your viewpoint on how, I don't know, I guess tell us what you think about as far as good reps, the good, the bad, and the ugly that you've seen from your experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like, I think if you almost have to sort of parse it down to a very specific part of medical sales, right? Like, to your point, pharma reps, that world is a very, very different job and a very, very different life than medical device sales, right? And certainly within the world of medical device sales, there's sort of orthopedic surgery, where by far compared to other specialties, right, it's a much more medical device heavy job.
Yeah.
If you're selling to cardiac surgeons or general surgeons or other specialties, excuse me, it's a different animal altogether. So what we deal with, I think, in the world of medical devices is a very specific niche, and you guys can kind of probably talk more about what it's like from a company perspective to be in orthopedic medical device sales versus some of the other worlds that they might have in front of them. But this is a pretty labor-intensive gig, and I have a good buddy who is a business professor, and he focuses on sales. He has a sales center at a big university, and he brings undergrads and grad students, through a sales program, right? And those guys go out in the world, and usually the jobs they get right out of undergrad are sales jobs in a big company that that they did an internship for or something like that, right? They step out of their education into kind of this curated job that they already have. They've been on calls, they've shadowed some more senior people, and they just kind of step into that job. In the medical device world, there's no such undergrad prep, to your point, right? Like, Stryker doesn't do a lot of medical device sales internships, right? Where they get folks to sort of tag along. So Matt's not wrong. Like, you get thrown into this, and there's not a lot of understanding of what kind of pool you just jumped into, right? And honestly, if we talk about orthopedic medical device sales, it's probably the most difficult, I think, in my mind, medical device, genre, right, that you could get into. Like, the pharma reps that come to my office, that's a pretty easy gig, right? Like, you have a new pill, you get to bring lunch in, and basically you kind of just sit around the lunch table and talk through, the science behind the research and what the potential side effects are, and that's kind of it. Like as a salesperson, you basically need to know, what the approval process looked like through the FDA, what the side effects are from the drug, and what the size and situation the current market is in.
Yeah.
And then you kind of just talk to the doc. You have a completely other job in orthopedic medical device sales, right? Like you are on the clock to be there and provide the instrumentation for the case for the surgeon when he needs it, right? And
Yes.
that is sometimes very difficult. I think one of the mistakes that the companies make, and maybe Matt, you can speak to this a little bit, but sometimes the mistakes are that the number of accounts and the size of the region is almost unmanageable for the number of reps that they hire, right? You'll find a guy that has to be in two places at once, and there's surgeons that are in the middle of cases saying, "Where's my guy? Where are my instruments?" And there's often sort of the thing that I've seen that happens is the sales rep will say, "Well, Dr. Myers, you're good, right? Like you've been using these devices for a long time. You don't really need me in the room. I've got to run to another case. I'm just going to leave this stuff here in the corner, and if you need it, go ahead and grab it, right?"
In there. Yeah.
And that's great most of the time.
But you don't want that.
But what's happened is you're now stretched too thin, and then you've just lost your opportunity to interact with your customer, because you have to cover 6 cases that are all going on at the same time.
Yes.
And then you rush through traffic, get to the other operating room, show up out of breath, and you find that case was delayed an hour and a half. Right? It's
Patient's not even in holding yet. Yeah.
patient. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the surgeon's chilling in the surgeon lounge waiting for you to start the case as well. And so, I think it is this podcast could be super useful for people who are considering this gig, just to understand what the different specialties are and what they might entail. You guys are Stryker guys. I mean, when Matt and I started doing this, they had acquired this robotic joint replacement system, the Mako system, and part of the job wasn't actually to sell the robot, right? Like the big part of the job was to help template the case, understand the software, really know what was going on through a knee replacement, and be able to sort of enter data and help the surgeon navigate something that was brand new. Yeah. And that had nothing to do with selling anything. The robot was already in the room. The hospital had already paid the money for the robot, and you were more a software engineer helping the surgeon do the case, which was definitely not in the job description.
Right.
It was interesting to me that Stryker came and said, "Okay, we're going to wheel this robot into your OR, and we're not going to bring engineer/technician to help you with your case. We're just going to teach the sales reps how to do it." And the sales reps were like, "What?" Like I didn't major in software engineering. Like I don't know how to use robots. And what it did was it really exposed the people that have no idea what's going on in surgery. There are a lot of reps that came through that are helping you run that robot, and you're like, "Okay, we're gonna align the femur now. Show me the femur," and they're like, they don't know the difference between the femur and the tibia, right? So it can be surprising, right? And it can be a lot more than just a sales gig.
Yeah.
So if you're a super engaging guy and you're the president of your fraternity and you're like, "Look, I'm going to go into medical device sales and make a whole bunch of money," you might find out that you have to learn some science and do some different stuff other than sitting around the lunch table and being a gregarious personality.
Right. That's really well said, because I think you said a lot there that I wanted to touch on, but it's a gift and a curse for this industry to be able to bring in individuals who are not necessarily trained on anatomy, biology, physiology to become a medical device sales rep or a medical sales rep, pharma rep. You can get in and you can be trained on the job. However, you get thrown right in, and there rarely are any internships available. I've had so many people ask about internships. Working with someone right now who's a year away from graduating. She knows she wants to get into medical sales. However, what can I do? I was like, well, there are no internships, but I can help. And I'm actually in the middle of developing a sales associate role with my company where they're getting trained through the idea of, through the lens of myself, who was a sales manager. Now, we're not going to be going to doctors and we're not going to be going to hospitals, but I'm going to help you get into the mindset of it because that's the best that I can do. Now, again, if you have $10,000 to $20,000 or more and the time to go to a trade school for medical sales, which is rare, but they do well, they will educate you so the step into medical device sales isn't such a plunge. But that's where you kind of separate the great from the good and those who just don't even make it at all, right? So I feel like it's my job to help put a mirror in front of people and say, look, it seems like based on your lifestyle, your personality, XYZ, you would be best suited for this, right? Maybe you just would like if you're 28 years old and you have a kid and a wife at home, maybe becoming an orthopedic trauma rep isn't the move for you. Nope. Unless you want to get divorced in 2 years,
nope.
Right?
Don't do that.
There's other opportunities. Maybe sell a stint where you don't have to be in the room all the time or whatever it may be, and making those decisions because there are roles that are imperative that the sales rep is 100% dedicated to what they do. And that's why I say once you're in because you are absolutely needed, I think. And it seems like based on what you're saying. And Matt, what you've been through, I mean, I showed up to Mako at a point when they have figured so much stuff out, and I leaned on you so much. You went through the acquisition and the changing of the guard and all these things. Yeah. I mean, your insights on it are.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of give you a background from that standpoint. So I've done a little bit of all of it. When I first started, I got plunged in. Fortunately for me, I had such an adept because my background is in biology from an exercise science degree. I knew the anatomy, physiology, I knew the biomechanics, I knew all of those things going in. I had to learn the product side of things, where I had to learn, like, wow, what are we doing with this product? What does this look like from an engineering standpoint? Does this make sense from an engineering standpoint when we put it in the body? And just learning. Fortunately for me, my background helped me out tremendously to grasp those concepts really, really quickly, and was able to just sort of jump in and be successful because I was able to learn on the job quickly how to have conversations with surgeons and fortunately enough, learning the trays. Like my first day, they're like, hey, here's 30 trays. You're going to dump everything in these trays out on the table, and then you're going to put them all back together. And you need to know exactly where every piece is in this tray and what every size and what every number and all those things. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I'm putting things back together. It's like a puzzle. I like that. Then they're like, you're going to go in the OR and you're going to tell the surgeon how to do that. And I'm like, I'm going to tell the surgeon what? Those kind of, that kind of questions where and then having a pager. I've been in the industry so long that I had a pager, just like Dr. Myers had a pager. And if you were needed, you had to use the hospital phone to call whoever's calling you on the pager, because we didn't have cell phones that we could use because they didn't work in the OR. It was like, that's how far. And then you're getting calls at 11:30 at night. Hey, man, we're going to use your nail in like 45 minutes. Can you come to the hospital? Yeah, I'll be there. Get to the hospital. Oh, we're delayed for like 2 hours, man. I don't know. Like they didn't get approval. Like cardiac clearance is not ready to go, and they're polytrauma, but we're going to use you. 4 hours later, then you're finally doing the case at 5:30 in the morning. You get done with the case, and it's like, oh, I got to go now to my total joint cases at another hospital. So I'll be up all night.
Yeah.
That's what is people miss. People don't understand that. They're like, oh, I don't get to sleep at night. No, if you're in trauma, you're never going to sleep. You're going to be called every single hour of every single day if you have a good product and they want to use it. Otherwise, you are out there trying to get somebody to use your product. And when they do, you better show up, or otherwise they're not going to use it for very long. So it's a whole different world. And then getting into the joint space, getting into revision space with surgeons and having conversations, deep conversations about patient care. There's so much to learn. I am still learning every single day. And I've been doing this for over 20 plus years. I'm learning something new every single day, especially now with AI. We have all of these things that integrated robotics. You're talking about all kinds of stuff. We're now augmented reality in the OR. Now surgeons are talking about, well, Do we do kinematic alignment for total knees? Do we do mechanical alignment for total knees? And now there's all these other things that are constantly evolving. Medicine is constantly evolving every day. Something new, something different. Is it better for the patient? Is it more cost effective or not? These are all conversations that we should be having every day. If you're getting into the medical space, you're gonna be drinking not through one fire hose. Like, you're gonna have fire hoses coming at you from every different direction.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's so much to learn, and leaning on the surgeons to learn from them. And a lot of times they're leaning on you. I mean, granted, I had a great background with total joints, and I learned the robotics quickly, and I was able to help surgeons because robotics was scary for surgeons. When I first did it, the doctors were looking at me like, what does that mean, or what does that do? So I'm having to answer questions and help them make the right decision for their patient. Even though I don't have a medical degree, I have the understanding of what that's supposed to get to and what they're looking to get to, and say, would you like to go this direction? This is what we anticipate the outcome to be, and having that conversation versus sitting there and being like, I don't know, doctor, what do you think? Right? It's a two-way street. And so people getting in the industry need to realize that you can't just think that it's going to be all like rainbows and, strawberries or whatever you want to call it. It's not that way. So.
Yeah. No, you're right. When I speak to some of these clients or potential clients, like, I'm trying to understand their background. I literally ask, what did your parents do? How did you grow up? Did you work when you were in high school? And not everyone's the same. And some people can make adjustments or have different different whys or different natural abilities, but helping them understand what they're going to go through to see if they're going to make it is incredibly important. So when you first start, like, the road to becoming a phenomenal sales rep, in my mind, kind of goes like this. Once you get started, you're just shadowing and you're trying to observe everyone. Obviously, your senior rep, but everyone around you and what's going on. You're just getting your bearings. And then you have to do some self-training on your own. You have to, if you really want to be great at what you're doing, you have to kind of take a pause on the rest of your life, right? Mom, dad, whomever in your life, I love you, but I'll reach out when I can. Otherwise, I'm busy, literally 24/7. Yeah. And if I have free time, I'm looking up the PDFs that my company gave me, so I make sure I memorize this stuff. So I can get past the point where I actually know something and people actually can kind of respect me because I know what's in my trays and I can kind of cover a case myself. Then it's getting to the point beyond your products, because it was really cool going into a hip fracture case and realizing I think I've seen more hip fractures than this surgeon has, because this is one of the only things I sell. He's been in way more surgeries than I have. But this particular procedure, I need to be really helpful here. And I am really helpful because I've done so many at this point. And then you get to the point where understanding anatomy and, not necessarily helping pull traction because that's not allowed, but things where you're helping out in the OR beyond your product because you truly understand. And then it finally got to the point where I was now concerned, or I wanted to help my surgeon in their practice, understanding the economics of healthcare, the economics of running a practice, and being a valuable resource. I remember being at a place where I was at Overlook Hospital in New Jersey, and there was this, I forget the fracture pattern, but it was something, periprosthetic. The surgeons were talking to one another. How do we tackle this thing? And then they were like, call this Zimmer rep. And I was like, Zimmer for trauma? And it was just that he's been around for a long time and he's just been in the game and he knows how to, he just has the mind for it. He has the experience. Maybe he's seen something like this. And I was like, damn, I want to be that guy one day. But it only takes time and actually caring about it. And then after that, it's like beyond that, understanding hospital economics and being able to have discussions with C-suite and surgeons in their practices and being able to provide more. And at that point, you're embedded, right? And you're a true benefit to everyone around you. You're part of the overall team.
Because you're bringing value, not just a product. That's the difference, right?
Yeah.
That's, I think, what's missing. Well, honestly, I think it's still missing a lot of times where people are just trying to sell their product versus asking the question, what am I doing for patient care for the surgeon? What am I doing to help solve the problems the surgeon is having? And that's really what it boils down to when it comes to being a good sales rep, is not selling a product, but solving that problem for the surgeon because they see it in their patient and they're trying to solve their patient's condition. Dr. Myers, agree, disagree?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to unpack in
Oh
what you
yeah.
guys both just said, right? But I think to back up a little bit, you're right. I mean, I think in the initial part of your career, you are just shadowing, right? And kind of drinking from four fire hoses, like you were talking about. Like I sort of agree with that. I think one thing that you guys started to talk around a little bit is what that surgeon interaction is like in the operating room. When there may be cases where the surgeon is stressed, right? Doesn't know what to do and needs either input from somebody with more experience or needs input from even people who are sort of more seasoned with one specific implant or one specific product, right? Like
Yeah.
you'll find in certain cases that, yeah, I know how to do this operation, I know how to fix this fracture, but I've never used your system before, so
Mm.
tell me what I do to put the interlock screws in or what, like, and you have to be on that.
Right.
And that, if you've done that and you've helped sort of ease the angst and the anxiety and the stress that goes on around some of those hard cases, then you've done your job, right? And you'll gain you'll gain the surgeon's respect and you'll gain their business. you know
Yes.
so I do think that people who are very, very early in their career or haven't really started their career, it really is about gaining confidence in yourself and then building a relationship with the doctors that you're covering, right? So that they trust you.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen immediately, right? It happens over time and years. Um, and this, as I sit here and listen to you guys talk a little bit, I think about how hard that is when you're brand new, right? It almost goes back to the whole idea of why aren't there internships, right? Like, why isn't Stryker sort of putting some money toward the idea, or your company or whoever, of finding some surgeons who are willing to have newbies come into their operating room, right?
Mm.
And just and just watch. You know, I think when medical device companies bring on new people, they pick certain surgeons that are pretty easy to work with, and they bring them into the operating room, and then they just stand and watch the case. That's pretty invaluable, because what you don't realize when you've been doing this forever is people are freaked out by being in the operating room, right? Like, they don't know what to touch and what not to touch, and they
Yep.
stand in the corner afraid because they're not, they think they're going to break the sterile field, and there's some horrible surgeons out there that are throwing instruments and, like, it's a bit of a scary environment if you're just coming out of college and you don't know what's happening in that room. Like, it can be a microcosm of stress and stuff like that. And if there was an internship where people that potentially wanted to get into that world, where they liked being in the operating theater, right? And they liked, contributing to the care of the patients that are on the table. It would be nice to know that as an intern before you go through, the process of trying to figure out this job, and then find that you can't cut it, right?
Yeah.
So as you guys were talking, I was like, yeah, that's probably pretty rough, right, for the guys that are on year one uh, of learning how to do this,
Yeah.
Um, and then skipping to the other end of it, right? Matt was sort of talking about, when your rep is valuable to you, and when your surgeon is valuable to the rep. Like, if you guys, if you've had a relationship with, your surgeon, or, a number of surgeons, boy, that's your currency in the business. If you're going to leave your company and go get a job somewhere else doing the same thing, what you're selling is you're selling, I have relationships with 20 surgeons who do 800 total joints a year, right?
Yeah.
That's how you get hired, right? I mean, it is super important to do that, because if you don't, and you get fired, or you leave your company to go somewhere else, and you don't have that relationships with your surgeons, the companies are going to be like, what are you, we're not going to bring you in at this price point, number one. because we can hire somebody right out of school and they have the same relationships that you have, which is nothing, you know. So there's no reason they're going to bring anybody in. And so having that relationship with the surgeon is your currency for your whole career. And if you stay in one place long enough, like, you'll start collecting relationships. And it's not really building your CV. It's really just walking into the next company and saying, these are the people that are loyal to me. These are the surgeons where I have their cell phone. These are the guys that are tolerable to work with in the operating room, right? and that is super important, you know. And that's on the back end of your career. But and then the other thing is to realize that even, I mean, part of it is the operating room environment, and in orthopedic surgery, that's the major part of your job. But there's a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of surgeons out there that aren't very nice, right? And there's a lot of surgeons out there that lose their mind in the operating room and are perfectly normal people outside the operating room, but they just can't handle stress, right? And you'll get yelled at and kicked out of the OR, and, you know.
Yeah.
And then you'll also find that there's a bunch of your clients that aren't good, that aren't competent, right? And you're suddenly thrust into the role of saying, excuse me, sir, you know, there's some other guys that I know that might do that a little differently. Like, don't put that screw into the aorta, you know, that's going to be a problem. And you have to be able to sort of finesse that relationship when you realize that the guy you're working with has no idea what they're doing. And one of the best compliments to me in my career have been the medical device reps that come see me as a patient, or send their family members or their mom in as a patient. Because the unique perspective you guys have is that you'll go all over the city or all over your territory, and you see everybody operate. And you'll quickly get an understanding of who knows what they're doing, who does a good job, and who doesn't, you know. And when you're in those cases with the doctors that are young or inexperienced, or are going too fast, or can't control their emotions, or cave under stress, or just are sort of not very well trained, that's a tough part of your job. And I've been lucky to have a lot of good medical device reps come and go. And then when they go and you get somebody else, then you're like, you know,
yeah,
this is making the case harder, right? Like, I lean on that guy, you know, for help. So there's a lot of nuance to building that relationship with the surgeon, and that's probably the most important part.
You wouldn't be speaking of anybody in particular, would you, Dr. Myers?
No, sir. Yeah.
It's all hypothetical.
Yeah, and you know, the guy that was on this call that blew me off for years when he was working for Stryker and went and worked with all the newbie surgeons, you know, that guy's exempt from all of this discussion. So
I'm sure that was it. I'm sure that was the issue, was that I had to go do the other things that were being done other ways.
Exactly. Yeah. And you couldn't just cover cases, right?
Yeah. Totally
That's
get that.
funny.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Dr. Myers. I think building the emotional intelligence of how to handle surgeons in the OR comes from an experience of being there, doing it, learning from the mistakes, learning how to communicate. And I would say the psychology of it is just as important as the skill sets that you're bringing to the OR. Having those conversations where you say to the surgeon, hey, what do you think about this idea? When you're trying to direct them in a way, and not just flat out saying, hey, that's a bad idea, don't do that. You don't want to say that to your surgeon. You want to say, hey, what do you think would be the outcome of this? Or what do you think about this? You know, let them make the ultimate decision about the patient care, because in all reality, they may be making a decision that's actually the right decision, but you don't understand their thought process. And so you're just asking a question. And if it gets you to an answer where, hey, yeah, this is the reason I'm doing that for that patient, you're going to learn something. Even if you thought, oh, I didn't think that he was doing something right, but he actually is doing something right. Or vice versa, the surgeon may go, actually, that's not a bad idea. Let's do it like that. But you're both learning from each other versus having this, I don't know what you would call it, this harsh conversation where you're telling them, no, don't do that. And I'm sure that happens in the OR. I try not to ever do that to my surgeons, because at the end of the day, they have MD at the end of their name and I do not. So I want to make sure that I'm putting my best foot forward to say, hey, I have seen some things, but you also have more education, training, knowledge, understanding about your patient care. I'm just trying to be a resource. And if I can provide some valuable input, so be it. If you choose to take it, so be it. If it's the not right thing for your patient, so be it.
Right. 100%. You know, and the fact that they can do things off label. But I'll say this, you know, so I'm a super young rep. I'm like, how did I even get this job? How am I here? I'm glad that I can cover a case by myself. And it's like, how do I inform this doctor that he should make an adjustment? And then there's times where you might even have the relationship with him where it's okay for you to do it, but you still want to be mindful and respectful of everyone else in the room and the fact that you're in that room. Right. Mm-hmm. So there's relationships with doctors that you might call them by their first name. Hey, call me by my first name. We go to dinner. Our wives know each other, whatever it is. But when you step into that room, it's Dr. Myers. It's Dr. So-and-so, right? There's that level of respect. And it's the fact that all of the liability, at the very least, all the responsibilities on that surgeon, not the nurses, not ourselves. Well, the nurses to some degree, but certainly not us. Like, we're not liable. So we have to be mindful of that. And having those conversations, those delicate conversations, are difficult. So for me, when I was young, the best way that I could do it was just kind of like you said, Dr. Myers, like, actually, hey, doc, like, as they know, I'm covering this nail for a while now. I saw Dr. So-and-so try this. Or at a training, you know, I found out this new way to go about it. You might want to consider this, whatever it may be. Hint, hint, wink, wink.
Yeah.
Like, just reconsider. Right. But yeah, there's a lot of times where I did that hint, hint, wink, wink. And then they look at me and it's like, I know what I'm doing, son. It's like, oh, yeah. Sorry.
But yet they've been struggling for an hour, right? Like,
yeah.
You guys have all been in cases where, you know, it's a struggle fest. Yeah. And it just the variability of the human condition. Like, you can be the best surgeon in the world and you're going to get into hard and complicated cases where you're going to struggle, you know. And you either have a personality that can deal with that or you don't, you know, and there's sort of a weeding out process that happens that way. You know?
I did have a young rep, fantastic candidate, really bright kid, willing to work, and he had to quit. He quit. He sat down in front of me and I just saw it in his face. He's just like, I don't like having the responsibility in that OR that affects the patient. And I asked some more questions because I was like, you know, you got so much potential. Plus, I don't want to go try and hire someone else. Like, you're the man. You know what I mean? And he was like, he came out of a femoral plating case. I think it was proximal femur. And the surgeon wanted a jig, an external jig, and he didn't realize that he did have it in the OR. So the surgeon did have to open up the patient and, you know, extend the incision. And it's just like unfortunate, and now you know better. But I could just tell in his face, he's never going to get over that. Like, he's never going to forget about that case, and he doesn't want to put himself in a situation where he's going to make that mistake for a patient ever again. Was it a mistake? Yes. Did he do anything wrong? Young man, whether you knew or not, I'm sorry, but he just couldn't handle that pressure, and it's not for everybody. You know, it really isn't. It really isn't. I'll never forget that conversation. I felt so bad for that kid, but yes. Anyways, I do want to ask some questions around your practice, Dr. Myers, because you are all pay. Is that, you can't just do that for, you know, you have to build your practice, build your reputation to get to something like that. Has that always been the goal, or has that been something that you have had to adjust due to the economics?
Yeah. Wow. How long do you guys have? Right. Like, we can talk about this for a week and a half.
All day.
We might run out of recording time. Yeah. So that is definitely not the norm, right? For orthopedics. The way that the healthcare system has been changing recently, as you guys probably know, is that it's more about consolidation and about sort of large groups, hospital-based care, you know, big academic orthopedic practices. right? The private practice physician is sort of a dying breed, and certainly a solo practice physician in surgical specialties is a unicorn, right? Like no one is really doing that anymore. Um, and honestly, I've been in practice for 22 years now, and that's what they told me 22 years ago. They're like, you can't just go out and hang out your shingle and be a country doctor on the corner, right? Like you'll never survive. You either have to go get a job for a hospital, or if you have to join an established orthopedic group, or you might start wherever you did your training and do your fellowship and then come on as faculty at a big university. And that's kind of the way that the healthcare system has forced people to do that, because the administrative burden of running a medical practice is almost impossible if you're a busy surgeon, and you'll end up hiring 20 people just to interface with insurance companies to get you paid, or to let you do the cases that you want to do for every one surgeon that's in the practice, right? So they told me that 22 years ago, and I was like, yeah, but I'm different, right? I'm going to be able to do this. And I just never really listened to anybody. And I did it. I started my own solo practice, and I've been a solo practice doctor here in Atlanta this whole time. The benefit of doing that is autonomy, right? Like I clearly don't work well with others, right? And so the idea of running your own business, deciding what patients you see, deciding what patients you don't want to see, deciding, what insurance plans that you take, and deciding what insurance plans you don't want to take, deciding what hospitals you want to work at, deciding whether you want to take call or not. All of those decisions are yours, as if you're running your own business. If you are working for a large group or working for a hospital system, none of those decisions are yours, right? They will tell you how often you take call and what emergency rooms you cover. They will tell you what clinics you're going to see and what insurance companies you're going to take, and what reimbursement levels that you will accept. And then they salary you, right? So you've gone to medical school and done all of this training in your life, and now you're sort of a salaried employee. And your boss, who is maybe a hospital administrator that did worse than you in school and went on to get an MBA and now runs your life, that guy is telling you, hey man, we looked at your production last year, and you're a little bit slow, so we're going to send you out to a satellite clinic that's a 2-hour drive away on Fridays, and you're going to see some patients out there, right? I mean, and you have to do that, or they're like, well, you're not productive enough, so we're going to cut your salary, or you're not going to get a bonus this year. And so you're now a commodity, right? Like you're a cog in the wheel. And there are a lot of doctors that went into medicine that didn't think they would give up that autonomy, and I was just like, yeah, like no one's going to tell me how to practice and how to and who I want to see. And so I was lucky, like I was able to keep my practice going early, and build a reputation. Interestingly, I never spent a dime on marketing. I just tried to do a good job and get patients sent to me via word of mouth. And, eventually over time, I kind of built a good referral network that was mostly from previous patients. And I was able to sort of survive over this time. I haven't taken call in 22 years. I didn't take Medicare or Medicaid, or any government insurance. I only took private insurance or commercial insurance. I got to the point where I stopped doing like hip replacement surgery and trauma and all of that kind of stuff, and I just did knee and shoulder and elbow arthroscopic procedures. So I was able to kind of just hone down to the cases that I was good at. I got to the point where I saw mostly young people, and part of that is because I didn't take Medicare, right? And so you don't see the 65 and older group. So most all of your patients are younger and athletic. And being a sports medicine doctor, I worked on people that were mostly healthy, right? And so that's a huge advantage, right? If you're not taking care of sick people, interestingly, your outcomes are very good, right? And so it was a very good move, at least for my personality, um, to be independent and solo, doing mostly outpatient surgery, so that I really didn't have to have anything to do with the hospitals.
Yeah.
And I was able to kind of, build a nice practice where I was as busy as I could be. Like I was doing between 400 and 450 cases a year, which was about as busy as I wanted to be. And that was, carving down just to the patients that I wanted to see and the cases that I wanted to do. And then a little before COVID, like sort of leading up to COVID, and then definitely after COVID, like things changed in the health insurance industry, right? Like there's all these problems which we can go into ad nauseum with having to get prior authorizations to do surgeries, having all of your insurances started denying payment for things that they used to pay for. And even now, like today, there's now AI algorithms that will just automatically deny your claim because you missed one sentence in your operative report or something like that, right? And then you have to fight that and appeal that and all of the stuff that goes on with that. And it was to the point where I had trouble hiring enough administrative help to just get paid for what I was doing, right? And then it got to the point where insurance came in and said, look, we're not going to let you fix this patient's rotator cuff because they haven't had 6 weeks of physical therapy. And you're like, look, this patient's had a rotator cuff for a year and a half. They can't lift their arm. It's retracted 3 centimeters. They are not going to respond to physical therapy. You need to let me take this patient to the operating room, right? So now you're begging an insurance company to let you do a case, and they have no experience. They didn't see the patient, right? It's some either AI algorithm or bureaucrat telling you can't do the surgery. So now you're doing peer-to-peers, on a daily basis just to ask permission to do surgery. And then when you do that operation, they only will pay you for 2 of the 5 codes that you build because they're bundled, into the other codes. And so that's their way of cramming down a 4-hour rotator cuff repair and paying you $2,200. So it got to the point where I was like, yeah, I mean, I am in a pretty good situation in that I have my autonomy, but I can't continue to practice the way that I want to practice with insurance companies telling me what to do. And then there's a whole other level that I could go into, but I won't. But it has to do with the idea that it's basically a socialistic system where everybody gets paid the same. Like you contract with an insurance company, and if you are, let's say you're contracting with United Healthcare, and you're a surgeon that just got out of fellowship and you've done 5 cases on your own, and you do that same rotator cuff repair, you'll get reimbursed the same for that repair as I do, having had 22 years of experience and having, better training, better education, better everything, right? Like you can't, if you're a higher level surgeon, you can't bill a premium for your surgeries, right? So the only way you get ahead is to do more, right? You see more patients, you do more surgeries, So what happens there? Well, that means that reimbursement is tied to volume rather than tied to quality. So now you've got guys that are trying to do 10 total knees before noon, right? And you've got guys that are trying to see 65 patients in a clinic, right? Because the only way that you can get paid more is to see more volume. And if you're seeing, that many people in a clinic, you're spending 2.5 minutes with your patient, or you have a PA or a nurse practitioner that's seeing that patient for you. And that's not great doctoring, right? And so I chose to practice differently, right? So eventually, to answer your initial question, right, it got to the point where I said, look, this is my business, this is my ability to practice, and I have the autonomy to choose, you know, who I get to pay me, right? And so I decided to just be out of network for all insurance plans altogether and see what happens, right? And I have the ability to do that. Like if you worked for a hospital, you would have no ability to do that. They would laugh at you, right?
Right.
If you work for a large orthopedic group, like the local groups around me, they would laugh at you too, right? Like there's no way that, you know, either the entire group would have to be out of network entirely, or or the entire group have to stay in network. Like you don't have the ability to decide whether you want to see Medicare patients or not, right? Like the group decides and everybody goes along with it, you know?
Yeah.
So as a solo practice, I have the ability to do that. The other reason that it's actually working is because I have 22 years of practicing in the same place, and I have a pretty good referral base where people will come and see me and pay out of their pocket anyway. Whereas you couldn't really do that if you're just starting practice, or if you've only been practicing for a short time, right? Like you have to kind of build your brand and have an established business in order to do that. So I kind of had a unique scenario that allows me to do that. And surprisingly, it's an interesting study in human sociology. I'll get a patient where, when I was taking insurance, the case would happen and the insurance company would deny it and get it appealed, or we would have to fight the payment, and it would take a year or something. And eventually they would say, look, we're going to pay all but $67 of this, and that $67 needs to be billed to the patient. So you're like, okay. So you call the patient 18 months later and say, hey, remember that surgery you had a year and a half ago? You owe me $67. And every patient will be like, absolutely not. No matter what their economic situation is, no matter how rich they are, no matter how good you did or how good an outcome they had, they will fight tooth and nail. They will be like, I paid that. You guys sent me 1,000,000 statements. I had 20 phone calls with the insurance company. There's no way that I'm going to pay you that $67 a year and a half later. Now you take that same patient and you say, look, I'm going to do that operation, but before we go in and do this surgery is going to cost you $3,500 out of pocket, right? You have to pay me. Your insurance will pay for the rest of it, but that's what it's going to cost you, $3,500. They'll happily pay that, right? It's such a weird thing. Like they will fight hard against the insurance company that was supposed to pay 100% of it, and then they didn't. And they're like, you know what, doctor, I'm going to screw you. I'm not going to pay you $67 a year and a half later. But if they know up ahead and there's price transparency, they're like, this is what you're going to get. This is what you're going to owe. And I'm never going to bill you another penny. Like you'll never get a statement. You'll never get anything else. You pay this. That's the end of it. They're like, okay, I can budget it. I think I can afford it. And I have a whole bunch of patients that are actually willing to see me and happy to do that, because they think, whether it's right or wrong, they're getting a better level of care, And it's a little bit interesting, because if you go to some high-end boutique and you buy a purse for $6,000, or you go to Target and get a purse for, $15.60, your impression of the high-end purse is that it's a better product because you paid so much money for it, right? In the world of third-party payers, people are kind of like, well, I don't know how much that was worth. He did a good job and my knee feels better, but my insurance company paid for it and I don't even know how much they paid him. Like he's a rich doctor. They probably paid him like $50,000 for it. And in reality, they paid you $1,200 and the patient has no idea. So it's been an interesting social experiment for me. But what it's done is it's allowed me to provide better care. Like I now have between 18 and 20 patients a day. I sit down and talk with people for 30 to 45 minutes about their injury. Wow. They are well informed, have a good relationship with me, and they are happy to, sort of pay that money up front, knowing that the rest of the hospital bill for the surgery is going to be billed to their insurance. And they're often shocked at like, I'll tell them, look, this is going to be, between $2,500 and $2,800 that you have to pay me. And they're like, that's all you get to do this operation? like, yeah, that's what we're getting reimbursed. And they're shocked. Like most of the public thinks that it's like 10 grand or 20 grand or something like that the surgeon
Right.
gets. And it's really not. So it's been a really good experience. It's allowed me to practice better medicine. Am I making less money? Probably, right? I mean, I certainly don't have the surgical volume that I used to have, but I have half the staff that I used to have, and I have a tenth of the headache. And I think if you surveyed doctors that were 20 years in practice and asked them if they could do it, would they do this model? They absolutely would, right? Every physician is burnt out, and they're not burnt out because they hate what they're doing. They're burnt out because they hate dealing with the healthcare system in this country. They hate it, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm sort of lucky that I'm able to keep a practice like this going. And sort of transition to this model. You didn't know you were asking such a loaded question, did you?
A quick heads up. If you're getting value from this and you want more, check out medsalesblueprint.com. That's my website where I help people get into medical sales. I have tons of resources and tons of content. So whether you want to get in or you want to help someone get in, send them my way. I'm ready to help. You can reach out to me there, or you can also find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Back to the video. I've got notes for days here. That was impactful. I mean,
well, Matt and I had long conversations about sort of the decline of the healthcare industry in general, right? And sort of I'm on the front line, first through the wall for doctors that are seeing this, right? But if you start talking about this topic from a patient perspective, it's worse.
Yep.
Like it's pretty bad for us, but it's getting worse for patients,
Yeah, it's well known that you get injured and you go through the machine, and then you see the doctor for 5 minutes. They pop in technically, and then they move out, and they're just a part of this cog in the wheel. And people try and blame different aspects of the business, big money, insurance, all this stuff, but it's just kind of become that way one way or another. And so hearing what you've done, it's pretty damn incredible. And I could comment on so many things, like the priceless aspect of just having sane mind and being in charge of your life and all these decisions, sitting down with the patient for 30 to 40 minutes, setting expectations. That's all phenomenal, fantastic. And I'm sure a lot of people who are going to hear this are probably nodding their heads or maybe thinking through different things. But what I know is more recently, so I haven't, in speaking to doctors and residents that I'm not selling to, and now more often because I'm not selling right now, it's more often, I'm getting a sense that they're realizing, is it really worth what they thought it was going to be, becoming a doctor? And I think that's always happened, right? Like you make this commitment, and then you approach what you start to see what it's going to be like, and you're like, oh, I signed up for this. But now more than ever, I feel like it's, is there a way to mitigate this? Maybe I can be part-time. Like I know a doctor who's been doing it for years nearby, and he was actually having a discussion with another surgeon. They said, just cut our pay in half. We will see the same we'll manage the same practice together.
Yeah.
And the hospital was like, no way. They were like, well, then we're both leaving. And they were like, well, wait a minute. Right. And they were like, we just need a life. Right. And then in talking to another resident, she's just like, I'm super passionate about this. And it's not about the money. And in order to make money, I'm going to have to not have a family, essentially, and not go back to North Carolina and visit my parents and go on the boat with dad and stuff. I value that. So I'm trying to figure out a way where I can manage and make good pay off all my loans when I'm done, right? And so what you're saying right now, leads to, I can't help but think about that. I feel like some people feel like they're stuck. There's a mix of, I put all this time, effort, I have a passion for it, but I'm a part of this monstrous machine. And what are the alternatives? And you're talking about one right now that seems to check a lot of boxes of things that people wish that they could do or have. It's pretty incredible, really. I went to your website and there was prices on there.
Yeah.
Wait, a doctor has his prices laid out. That's a part of the thing, is trying to figure out what's the cost of this going to be.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're very insightful, right? Because a lot of people, I mean, even people who've gone through medical school and got into residency still don't realize what this life is like, you know. And it's an interesting parallel to the people that are just about to go into medical device sales, right? Like, it's kind of an interesting parallel, right? Because the common denominator is you are probably going to be pretty busy, right? And this generation of people behind us is very interested in work-life balance, right? And what it's going to be, you know, how intense is your career going to be, and how committed are you to that, right?
Yeah.
And you are exactly right when you say it's sort of this machine that chews up the people that work for it and spits them out, right? I mean, COVID was a great example, right? Like, there was this sort of nationwide crisis, and the people that got hit hardest were healthcare providers. You know, like, there was no, all the things wrong with the healthcare system were amplified in COVID, right? And so, you know, you had people that came out the back end of that were like, whew, you know, I'm not sure I'm cut out for this, you know.
Right.
And there's no other profession in the world that's like that, you know, where just the demand um, on your time and on your effort and on your energy and on your focus, it does take away from, you know, what kind of life you want to have, unless you find an alternative, right? Like I have.
Yes.
I do think that younger people are probably stepping back, you know, maybe from medical school and saying, you know, maybe being a doctor isn't all of that. Maybe I will be a PA, right, or a nurse practitioner, and I can mitigate some of this stuff, um, and still sort of have the joy of patient care. Um, that works well for some personalities, right? It's a little tough to not be in charge, you know.
Yeah.
You have to sort of accept that. But I do think you're right. I think people are starting to come out of their training and maybe rethink what kind of role they want to have, because the healthcare system is such of a monolithic, you know, machine that they can't really penetrate it and make it what they want. Like, I'm lucky that I can, right? Like, I can still function in the healthcare system and make my work life what I want it to be. But there's no other practices out there like mine that will let you do that, you know.
Yeah.
Um, Even things like plastic surgery, for example, comes to mind, right? Because they're not as much a part of the healthcare system, and they do charge their fees ahead of time, and it is a little bit like kind of the model that I'm using. Um, but there's a lot of other stuff that goes along with being a plastic surgeon, that isn't. Um, I don't even know how to describe it. It isn't as much a doctor-patient relationship, right? When you're doing cosmetic stuff, you're not really saving anybody's lives, right? And
Yeah.
you're putting them at risk. And they're choosing to do that, right? Which is why it's sort of an elective type of specialty.
Yeah.
And it's just a different relationship that you have if you're a plastic surgeon. That's a model, right, where you can be pretty free of the healthcare system if you want, and you don't have to rely on this, you know, this antiquated third-party payer system for you to get paid, right? Like, the patient's writing you a check for
Right.
what you're doing. So there are alternatives for the young person, right? Like, you could be a PA, you could be a nurse practitioner, you could go into medical device sales, you could become a plastic surgeon, you could, you know, you can do things to get out of and away from this sort of wretched system that we're in, as a provider.
Yeah. Interesting. I would say you have the best of both worlds between traditional healthcare and surgery versus cosmetics, where, you know, someone who's going in for a rhinoplasty, you know, they're probably asking around who's good at this, and then after they decide to pay the thousands of dollars for their facelift or whatever it may be, they look in the mirror and are they happy or not? And then you know, it's where they come to you and it's like, I can't rotate my wrist, I can't work.
Yeah,
It's function. It's not for pleasure or
yeah. I
ego or
fell off
whatever it may be.
and I can't walk, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like,
I
yeah. Happy to help you. You know,
I can't lift my child. I can't go to work.
yeah,
Please help me. Take my money.
right.
bring me back to normal.
And you're right. I mean, that's a different relationship, you know. And in my opinion, it's a better relationship, right? Because you really get a better sense of, accomplishment when you see that person back on the golf course or whatever,
Matt, is there anything that you wanted to go over?
I think I was just thinking about what he's talking about from a standpoint of, I think that Dr. Myers is he's the first one through the breach, right? He's one of the first ones through the door to say, this system is so screwed up. I'm going to change the model in order to have a better life and still do the things that I want to do for patients. And I honestly think that in the next few years, we're going to see more and more what I would call concierge medicine doctors that are going to say, you know what, I've had enough. I'm good enough. I've done enough training. I have enough skill set. People are willing to come see me and willing to pay. I'm opting out of the health insurance company model. I'm getting away from all that, and people are going to pay me out of pocket to do the surgery. And I think they'll get great care from those surgeons that decide to do that are willing to take that risk and put them. I think part of it is maybe that surgeons aren't willing currently to do that. I think they're scared. Am I going to make enough money, or am I not going to make enough money? Blah, 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 whatever you want to call it, versus I want my life back. And Dr. Myers has been courageous enough to say, I want my life back, and I'm tired of dealing with the things that I should not be dealing with because I'm beholden to the insurance companies to pay me to pre-authorize the surgery that I know is right for my patient, and yet I'm still running into this wall. So I'm like, I'm just going to tear the wall down, and everybody's going to come see me straight. That's basically the model. I mean, honestly, that's the way it should be that way. And I think we're going to be seeing more and more of that going forward. And I think in all specialties, not just, I think plastics has been doing it for a long time because let's be honest, people are vain and they want to look better and they're willing to pay the money. It's so crazy to me that we've gotten to the point where now people are like, well, I don't want to pay the money to have my arm fixed unless my insurance is going to cover it. I'm like, how are you going to live life if you have a broken arm or you can't function and you're unwilling to pay the money? I don't understand it, right?
Yeah.
And part of it is that we're all paying for it because if we have health insurance. I have a buddy of mine that writes on this he's brilliant. His name's Preston Alexander. And he goes, do we realize that we are all paying money for access that we then pay more money in order to get healed? Isn't that crazy that we're paying money to have access? That's what health insurance is. And he goes, oh, my employer is paying for it. No, your employer may be paying for it, but it's coming out of your check and you don't realize
Your check.
So we are all part of that. And it gets to the point where it's a house of cards, and eventually it's going to get blown over because it's sitting there waiting to explode. And surgeons, like it's waiting to explode. And we've seen already, and I hate to say this, some violent activity in the past couple year of people are fed up with being part of that insurance cog in the wheel situation, and it's reality. I mean, unfortunately. So
I really hope the pendulum does start to swing back. Like it's gone so extreme, and I think hopefully this gets heard by other people and people build the confidence. Either they're doing it already and they get that reassurance, or they're making some decisions to make some adjustments. Because when I started in this industry, it was like, yeah, this is the way it's going. These residents do not get educated on the business side of things. If you ever want to get residents to an event, it's no longer beers and fries. Yeah. It's like, hey, I have somebody coming in. They're going to educate you on the business side. Yeah. Every single resident in the whole area will be there because we're learning how to do surgery. We don't know how to run a practice or anything like that. And I'm accruing debt. So let me just join a practice that's going to help with that, or a guaranteed money from a hospital, and it'll be covered. And that has kind of balled itself into where we're at today, where surgeons are just another employed person who don't have a say, and sales reps have had to deal with that, right? Like, we got to sell the doctor, but they don't really get to tell anybody what to do anymore, but they're the ones who have to make sure that they like it. And then you got to go to the hospital and all these other things. But hopefully it swings back to where you are now operating. I've so overlooked this. Insurance will pay you not based on your experience level or your great outcomes. You'll get penalized if your outcomes are bad. And you'll another way to get paid more is to make sure that you're trying to bill for everything. So you're making decisions thinking about what line item can I bill for rather than just doing the damn surgery for the patient and what's right for them, which is where you're at. So
Yeah, I mean, again, very insightful, right? Like not being in the middle of this. Like you're whether it's conscious or unconscious, right? Like you'll do a case and you'll say, "Oh yeah, in the back of your mind, you know that this part of the surgery is bundled with something else that you're doing, right?" And so whether or not you mean to, you're going to kind of go through that part of the case with a little less thought or
yeah,
not as meticulous because you're in your mind you're like I'm getting paid nothing for this part of the surgery. And what's great about being you know billing the patient is that you don't have to divide it up amongst this arbitrary coding system that they've set up, right? A shoulder case, for example, you'll typically bill 3 or 4 codes for each of the different parts of the surgery that you do for the cuff repair. If you work with the biceps, if you do a decompression of the subacromial space, like those are all different codes. And so people used to try to maximize their reimbursement by billing more of those codes. And the insurance company said, we don't think all of these codes are indicated. You're just trying to overbill us. And so we're going to fight back by bundling some of these codes together, right? So that even if you bill one code for a rotator cuff repair and you do a bone spur removal, that's now going to be included and bundled together. So they tried to stop that process. And the beauty of doing this, this sort of self-pay is that you decide, right? Like you're going to tell the patient, look, I'm going to fix your shoulder and this is what it's going to cost, right? Like there's no, dividing it up.
right.
Now, unfortunately, the facility still sends that bill into the insurance company. And so you still do have to code and you still do have to parse it out on what you did. But from your perspective and your reimbursement, it's a shoulder arthroscopy and it costs this, right? And so you're a lot more free, I think, to your point, to just do the best job you can and not think about what's getting paid and what's not getting paid. And there are tons of horror stories out there, in the shoulder world about medical device reps, for example, being in a case and seeing a shoulder that looks completely normal and having a doctor sort of shave a tear into the rotator cuff and then repair it, right? Like, so you can bill a rotator cuff repair, and I've seen those cases, right? I've been an expert witness for those cases. I've seen video where you look through, the arthroscope, that this thing that the surgeon sees, and you're like, yeah, that's not torn. And now they take a shaver or they take a rasp or something and they undermine the tissue, and now it looks like a tear. Like there's a whole world full of abuse in the healthcare system because it's a third party payer and because it's coded that way and because they've sort of forced the surgeons to be rewarded for more surgery, not better quality surgery, right? If that makes sense,
There's incentive for that.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And again, back to the whole medical device thing, like that's an interesting ethical thing that might come across your plate when you're standing in there watching that case. Like you might be a surgeon that has said, hey, this patient has a rotator cuff repair. I'm going to need 3 of your anchors. And you're standing there and you look in there and you've seen enough and you've experienced enough and you're like, yeah, there's no cuff tear here. Well, that sucks for you because there's zero revenue for you. Like if he doesn't repair that, you're not going to get paid anything for covering that case, and you're not going to meet your quota, and there's sort of an ethical kind of problem with all of that.
Yeah.
And then what's even worse is if you see the surgeon then sort of do something that's unethical as well, right? Like there's always those sort of horrible things that happen that you need to be prepared to deal with when you're about to become a participant in the operating room, so. But yeah, it's definitely freeing. I mean, I think you're talking about the pendulum too, swinging back, and Matt's kind of doing some future predicting on where physicians are going to fall. I think it's up in the air. I think AI is going to change a lot of this.
Oh,
I think we could have an entire 2-hour podcast on, what the right way to insure everybody in this country is, right? I mean, we could have long discussions on is it true that healthcare is a right for every citizen? Because if that's the mission statement, then what you end up with is this behemoth, inefficient, terrible healthcare system that we have. I do think it's true that healthcare is probably a right for all of our citizens, but what it is now is a very base and bad level of healthcare is your right as a citizen of this country. And if you want good healthcare, you better be able to pay for it, and that's where we're going, right? Like, people can get Walmart healthcare, but if you want somebody good to do your surgery, or if you just want, sort of your baseline level of care, then you're probably going to have to pay on top of your insurance premium and on top of your deductible and on top of the other ways that the insurance companies are screwing you to get good care, And if you're in an ambulance, you're not really thinking about that,
Yeah, that's right.
So, but you can have a whole, I'd love to be in a super cool discussion about how to fix this system, because
we can meet again and have a deeper discussion into this. I know people would want to hear it 100%.
Yeah, it's super fun. But yeah, I think you're right. I think the pendulum is swinging back. I think you're going to see things like longevity clinics are going to start popping up, and they're going to be the internal medicine docs that are like, look, your insurance doesn't cover cutting edge stuff anymore. And so if you want to live to be 100, then we're going to test methylated DNA, right? We're going to get you a full body MRI scan. We're going to do a DEXA scan on you to see what your lean body mass is, and your bone density is. And that's all going to be stuff that you have to pay for out of pocket, because your insurance plan doesn't pay anything for that stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's how it's going to swing. It's not necessarily concierge medicine as it is just, you get the bare bones crappy stuff, which is you go to your doc for a physical and he says, look, you're 50, you need a colonoscopy. Thanks for coming. I got to go see my next patient, right? Like, that's it. That's what it's good.
You got to come out of pocket for your colonoscopy. Is that what
you're saying? Yeah. No, I'm saying that's what you get at a baseline, right? Like, if you have a primary care doc right now, and let's say you're a Medicare patient or whatever, you're supposed to get your yearly physical, but you're just going to get what insurance pays for. Now, insurance will pay for your colonoscopy, right? Yeah. Minus your deductible, whatever that is.
So you're still paying for it. I mean, let's be honest, you're still paying for it, because you got to pay the deductible. So,
Yep. I mean, your deductible, for commercial payers is somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000 these days, right? And then there's co-insurance, which is probably around 15 to 20% if you've got a good insurance plan. So your colonoscopy will probably run you between, $6,000 and $10,000 all in, and so you're paying $2,000 to $5,000 of your initial deductible, and then on top of that, you're paying 20% of the remainder, which is probably another $1,200 to $1,500. So out of the $8,000 bill, you're paying about $5,500 of that out of pocket, and you have insurance.
Yep.
Right.
So why not just say, hey doc, I know it costs, you're going to get reimbursed. Whatever, I don't know what it is for colonoscopy, but let's say, hey, I'll pay you $2,500 cash, doc, instead of me having to meet a $5,500 deductible or whatever, and actually get my colonoscopy done and pay you cash versus.
Yep.
Oh, I also, by the way, I did pay a premium. I pay a monthly premium to have health insurance.
Right.
Top of that for the year, which is probably, when you add it all up, is probably somewhere between $15,000 to $30,000. So my colonoscopy, because I got that one procedure this year, cost me $20,000. Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And you touch on a good point, right? I've done a lot of research on this whole self-pay thing, right? And just an MRI is a great example, right? So MRIs are super common. There are radiology companies all over the place that give people MRIs on a daily basis. And so what's interesting is that if you go to the MRI place and they'll say, do you have insurance? I say, yeah, I have insurance. And they give you their insurance card and they'll say, oh, your MRI today is, $1,500 or whatever. And you're like, okay, well, my deductible is $2,000. And so they'll say, well, so how would you like to pay that $1,500? Can we take your credit card? And you're like, yeah, okay. So you give them your credit card and you just paid $1,500 on, out of your $2,000 deductible. So you had to pay that. Interestingly, if you walk up to the same counter and you say, you know what, I don't have insurance, I'm self-pay, and I need the same MRI, and you say, how much is the self-pay rate for that MRI? It's $800, right? How would you like to pay? Give them your same credit card and you pay $800 for that MRI, because the amount that gets billed to the insurance is much higher than self-pay rates, right? Yeah. So if you don't plan on using your deductible to the max, it's cheaper to be self-pay for most of the things in medicine, right?
Yes.
It's crazy. It's a crazy broken.
I forget at the moment, but I think people at the office are incentivized in a certain way, not a dubious way, but to find out before giving the price as to whether or not they have insurance or not.
Yeah.
So that that determination can be made as to what price to give.
Right.
And that's incentivized from insurance, not by the people in the office. It's not that the person sitting in front of you wants you to pay more. They're indifferent. They're getting paid hourly.
Right.
But the insurance company has it set up in such a way, which is pretty incredible. And I know a number of people who have, let's say, left the corporate world and then they have to go get insurance on their own. And they're like, oh, I thought it was going to be way more. I thought I've been saving a whole bunch of money with my employer plan because
Right.
it's a plan. It's tens of thousands of people in that company. You think
Right.
you get a nice discount. I just went and got
Yep.
my own by myself. It's the same thing.
Yep.
What's going on here? So
Yep.
these golden handcuffs, as they call them, are these incentives, which it's nice to not have to deal with it and just pay and whatever, you get a good plan, but it's not what you think.
It's a total scam. It's a total scam for sure.
Incredible.
Yeah, and then that same insurance company comes back and goes, oh, by the way, you have a necessary surgery, and your surgeon requested to do that surgery, but we're going to deny it.
Right.
That's the fun part. Yeah.
Yep. Or again, they deny it afterwards, and then you owe $67 a year and a half later.
Yeah. Well, I obviously I hope this all changes, and I'm really curious to speak to you more about hearing about your essential predictions of how things are going to move forward. You gave us some insight.
Yeah.
On it. But to think about all of, and speaking with Bree is up on so much of the latest, whether they be trends or they're proven, just like health and wellness measures, preventive measures, actions you can take so that you're healthy, or tests that you can take to ensure that you're okay, or maybe predictions for the future, whether it's genetic testing or a fecal exam for your gut, and all these different things. It's like when I get into that world, I don't even think about my insurance. And like you said, insurance is essentially has become or will become bare minimum, right?
Right.
You broke your elbow, we're going to fix your elbow. But or is there anything that I could have done to prevent this? That's all on you. Insurance is not looking into the different alternatives so that you can have preventive measures from not getting diabetes or whatever it is. So you are getting, congratulations, you're paying a premium for Walmart.
Right.
And
Right.
I guess peace of mind. But in reality, if you really want good care, it's on you. So.
Yeah, and I do think from a physician perspective, like there's probably an opportunity there, right? Like there's an opportunity to come out and say, this healthcare system is not built to prevent disease, right? Like we are not built to pay for or prevent diabetes, right? What we want is we want a pill to take after we have diabetes, right? We're not built to prevent obesity. We want a pill to take that keeps us from being obese, right?
Yeah.
We don't have any insurance reimbursement for preventing arthritis. We're just going to pay for that knee replacement that you have once your arthritis is so bad that you can't walk. Like the whole system is not designed to pay for preventative type care. But that's a much cheaper way to go, right? And it's a much healthier way to go,
Yeah.
And so there is an opportunity, and I do think Matt's probably right, where there's going to be concierge doctors, and that pendulum is going to swing back, and there's going to say, here's our suite of products that we provide for you, and whether it's, testing hormone levels, right, and doing, hormone replacement, whether it's testing bone density, when you turn 40, because you're probably going to get osteoporosis when you're 80, but we're testing your bone density now when you're 40, and we're going to do things to prevent that so that it never happens, right? You end up dying before you get osteoporosis. There's nothing like that,
Right.
and people who have the means would be smart to find a provider or a clinic to start that stuff now,
Yes.
and it's all nutrition and exercise, and everybody goes back to that, but there's a way to nuance that and target that, right? It can't be that everything is solved with good nutrition and exercise.
Yeah.
There's other ways to screen for cancer and do other preventative things,
Right.
that should be directed by a physician,
Correct.
and that's a hard thing to do if you've got 90 people to see in a clinic,
Right.
and if insurance won't pay for anything.
Yeah. Because it's to your point, it's mainly acute care, right?
Yeah.
Come in. I just been shot with a gun in my arm. Please fix me.
Yeah.
I just got into a car accident. Please fix me.
Or it's
Nutrition.
managed. Like, if you think about primary care, right? It's managing it. Like, okay, we're going to see you in 6 months, and we're going to check your blood sugars again. Our goal is to keep your A1C below 7. So and again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but technology is going to help with that. Like, there's wearable stuff now. Like, suddenly people have an Apple Watch on and they're looking at an EKG, or they're monitoring their heart rate. Like, my daughter goes for a run and she's like, I got my heart rate up to like 190 beats a minute. And I'm like, so you're a healthy 20-year-old girl. What does that data help you with? Right? Like, that means nothing. But suddenly people are aware of their heart rate, and they're aware of their pulse oximetry, right? And they're aware of how many steps they did,
Mm-hmm.
And that's a nice sort of baby step trend towards people starting to think about preventative care and be like, I got to get my 10,000 steps in today.
Yeah.
It's going to help me live longer. So there's a sway in society for the medical establishment to step in and take that preventative stance, but it is being the headwinds are the healthcare system is not in place to reimburse for that.
Right.
It's in place to reimburse for the gunshot, for sure.
100%.
But
Yeah.
you don't expect your health insurance company to pay for your Apple Watch, right? Like, you're paying that out of pocket. So
Right.
go in and see a doctor and pay for a DEXA scan, or pay for, get your hormones evaluated. Like, do preventative stuff and just suck up the fact that there's no third party that's going to pay for this.
Yeah.
And it's going to end up being better care for you.
Maybe that's the way we could change. Maybe it should be part of your baseline health care situation. I mean, the insurance company's making so much money. Why should they not be paying for you to have preventative measures that are above and beyond what we currently have? Where you have a wearable, or you have a glucometer. You're wearing a glucose, because those people that can measure their glucose throughout the day can manage their diabetes better, which then, long term, better for their health. Maybe the insurance company should do that. I got a crazy idea. Why don't the insurance company donate 50% of their profits every year to medical schools to pay for surgeons to be trained to become doctors? How about that?
Yeah.
That'll be the day, right?
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I know. It's a wild idea, but think about that. Like, we're losing doctors. People are not going into medicine. Like, you guys are overworked because more and more people are saying, I'm not doing this. We're going to get to a point where we have no doctors that can actually take care of people. Then what are we going to do? Yeah.
Rely on some robots, I guess.
Yeah, I guess Elon Musk is going to build
whatever ChatGPT says.
Neuralink, and he said that we're going to replace all the doctors in the next 5 years, right? So
I saw that.
Yeah, but there's,
tool,
I'll tell you what, though, like, you better embrace some preventative medicine and start taking care of your own health, because right now the med students are using ChatGPT to get through med school. Yep. Right, so those are your future doctors.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, rely on the algorithm to get the answers.
That's right.
But yeah, the wellness clinics that have become really popular. I think it went from like med spa to now like wellness clinics where people are going to get these tests. Now, the people who open up these wellness clinics are looking to take advantage the American capitalistic way, where there's opportunity here to charge big dollars, and they're trying to sell you on something when you walk in. However, it is really nice to see an alternative approach to looking at health care, self-health care, and but I think if the traditional mainstream health care world applies itself into that space, it can set some guardrails, safety guardrails around that, because I think a lot of decisions are being made by those who don't necessarily have all the knowledge. Now, in a lot of spaces, you need at least one physician in that practice to be able to have that clinic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're going down this rabbit hole. But to embrace the idea, because one helps the other, right? One of them can prevent the patient from having to walk in at the point where their BMI is out of control, and now you're wondering, should I operate on this person? Well, if we would have educated them on nutrition and gotten them on whatever sort of injection that can help their, I don't know, I'm out of my league and my space with this, but kind of makes sense. Sounds like it makes sense.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Like the who that does this is super important, right?
Yeah.
Like the stakeholders in the preventative wellness movement is very important. Like we've seen that in orthopedic surgery in the orthobiologic space. Like I don't know how much you guys know about this, but it's it's the sort of the stem cell world and some of these regenerative medicine type options for musculoskeletal problems. What ended up happening is that there really wasn't enough solid data for orthopedic surgeons and other sports medicine providers to go forward with the orthobiologic stuff. But other people didn't care, and it was a self-pay item, and they went to market with that stuff anyway, right? So you ended up with like estheticians and chiropractors and other people sort of injecting people's knees with whatever stem cells or whatever, without the training or the understanding of the biology or the ability to handle any sort of complication or plan B if it goes wrong, And that's your point, right? Like there are a bunch of people that are out there that want to be capitalists and want to sort of profit from this type of stuff,
Yeah.
that aren't really trained and shouldn't be providing healthcare services, right? Or at least shouldn't be injecting people.
Yeah.
So if you've got somebody who's like, yeah, I'm an esthetician and I can put Botox in people's forehead or whatever, that's not much different than me injecting stem cells into somebody's knee joint. Yeah, it is, right? And if that doesn't work, and if that patient gets infected, like, are you capable of handling that? And the answer is you're not, right? So, I think that there is a way for trained physicians who are burnt out, who are sick of being in the system, to kind of pivot to some wellness and preventative stuff, where it's just now coming around that we do have the tools and the technology to be pretty effective with that. Like think about it with just the wearable things that we were talking about, right? To monitor, yeah, like a ring or a watch or whatever that monitors your blood glucose all the time, or counts your steps, or checks your heart rate or whatever. And then add on top of that things like the GLP-1 inhibitors, right? Like, you have pharmacologic options now that we didn't used to have, that can prevent the complications of obesity and diabetes. You have testing now where we have sophisticated functional MRI testing that you can do. We have, like, I'm working with Georgia Tech right now with it on a knee brace that you can put on your knee, and it attaches to your watch, and it will tell you if your gait is altered and your knee is seeing a poor load pattern, which is great for people who like to walk and run and hike. And it gives you real-time information on what's going on in the knee as far as knee effusions and inflammation and synovitis and things that are happening. And it can also tell you that the way that your gait's being altered as you unconsciously compensate for it, right? So there's all of these tools now that if you could package all that together, you could be like, look, you're going to pay me for this out of pocket, but here's your plan, right? Here's your nutrition plan. Here's your weight loss plan. Here's your strength training plan. Here's your cancer screening plan. Here's bioidentical hormones. Here's, we're going to start you on Ozempic for a month and see what happens to your body mass. Here's, your colonoscopy screening. We're going to set all that stuff up. And have somebody that puts a comprehensive plan in place before you get sick. And that's how we're going to prolong life expectancy, right? Like this is not a third world country, right? Like we should be providing better healthcare than they're providing in the Sudan, and we have the ability to do it. We just don't have the system to do it.
Right. And that's where
and Matt's point is good. Why not make insurance companies pay for it, right? It's because insurance companies don't want to pay for it, and they don't want to pay for anything, right? So you can stand up and raise your hand and be like, I'm Matt Hallmark. I'm going to, you need to be Trump and you need to sign some executive orders. And if you want to do that, then maybe the insurance companies will follow suit.
Send that to the White House right there. Send that exact thing.
Yeah.
Hey, make the insurance company pay for XYZ for better health for our population in the U.S.
It's what the Surgeon General should be doing,
That's
right?
exactly right.
We're going to tag a few people when we clip this and post it.
There you go.
We're going to be heard.
There you go.
It's true though. These worlds need to converge, and I think they will. It has to, and a lot of decisions are made after things get exposed that are unfortunate, right? Like so, steroids in baseball got exposed when Ken Caminiti died and he overdosed on drugs, and it was on Sports Illustrated, and suddenly it's like, hey, everybody's taking steroids, and everybody's like, we all knew that, but it's like now, hopefully we don't have to wait till something crazy happens, but I will say. I have a very good friend who works at one of these clinics, and there's a disconnect. And quick and easy way to explain it is he takes phone calls. He's highly educated on his own merit because he cares about it. And when he's having conversations with people who are calling in, curious about GLP-1s and such, and different types of peptides, and like, what are you interested? Well, I want to lose weight. Someone in the office might just say, well, here's what we got for you. And, take this X amount of times a day and this many cc's or whatever it is. And then, but he'll have a conversation and say, well, let's see your blood work, XYZ. There's other things that we need to understand about you before I just, send you off to the doctor who's then going to prescribe it. Now you have the doctors who are either burnt out or retired and they still have their license and now they're part of this practice. Their training has been on the primary care, acute care world where we're not dealing with this aspect of the business. So there is like, it's funny hearing his perspective because he's sitting in the middle of this, board certified, trained in something else, with someone who is understanding and cares about this new trend, but isn't a doctor themselves. And now the people are calling in because this stuff is valuable. It is helpful if used in the right way. So we're hopefully getting closer and closer to a convergence in this space.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the model, and I think that's the future. It'll just, to your point, it'll be interesting to see how it settles out and what stakeholders kind of can come together and control it, right? What you don't want it to be is you don't want it to keep declining to the least level of experience and training and consequently the least level of patient care, right? Everything tends to fall to that Walmart level of care, right? Because it's cheaper, right? That board certified, retired, burnt out doc that you were talking about is going to want $250K a year to supervise those clinics, right? Or more. Or you could hire a PA for $80,000 a year to supervise that clinic, right? Or you can get somebody who, is a chiropractor, right? And will take a percentage of the sales, or something like it tends to want to decline in level of care because that's the cheapest way to control your overhead.
Yes.
And so you have to have guys like your buddy that are there and are doing it the right way,
Yeah.
even if they are sort of supervised by people who don't have the experience or training. you know,
It
like
needs to be there. It has to be.
yeah, yeah. And there's ethics and everything that will guide people to do the right thing, but it tends to be a constant clash between capitalism and patient care, right? Like that's the classic fight between hospital administrators and surgeons, right?
Yeah.
It's the fight between, even in the medical device sale world, right? Like these hospital administrators are like, you got to give me bargain basement price for your knee implants, if and so now you're in a business negotiation. You're not negotiating with the surgeon. The only thing you have on your side is the surgeon wants to do the right thing for the patient, and we believe that our implant is better than the Zimmer implant, and so you should pay more for it. And the hospital's like, nope. It's a constant fight between capitalism and the healthcare system, and what's right for the patient. You could have a big long discussion about cancer drugs, right? Like how these doctors have these amazing cancer drugs out there, but the cost is $15,000 a month,
Hmm.
and the doctor's like, this drug will save your life, but your insurance company won't pay for it, right?
Yeah.
And there's just this huge problem because all the stakeholders, are there and they have to make money, but this is a patient's life, right? So as the oncologist, what do you do?
Yeah.
It is a messed up system for sure. But yeah, lots of interesting topics.
Absolutely.
I love having a captured audience to make you guys have to listen to me muse and go down these rabbit holes. That's kind of
I think it's great.
Perfect.
oops.
Yeah, I think we should probably clip it here. Thanks for watching. I hope that gave you some real insight. And if you're serious about getting into medical sales or someone you know, send them to me, medsalesblueprint.com. I have tons of resources, tons of content that help people on their way to get into medical sales fast. Phenomenal industry, you know it. People need help getting in, and that's what I'm here for.